So, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Open Healing Room. This is one of the few spaces where there is no pressure to perform, no pressure to have all the answers, no pressure to be healed. Just real people having real conversations. Okay, so I do have a couple of rules for this room, especially since it's on school. We want to make this a safe space. So, the ground rules are there must be respect, confidentiality. What happens in this room stays in this room. And of course, no judgment. That should go without saying. No fixing people. No debating experiences. Okay, we're not here to fix anyone. This is an open forum. This is an open space. So every day that we're here on Saturdays, we're here to listen, learn, and support. Okay. So let's ask ourselves this very simple question. What's one thing that you've been carrying today? Okay? And I want you to answer it. Okay? Another thing that we've been talking about for the last couple of days is the fact that potential is not reality. Okay? We went in depth into this. Where, as much as we talk about the narcissistic dynamic, we always look at the fact like, oh, potential is a bad thing. It's really not a bad thing. Potential is what keeps the rest of us normal, functioning human beings moving forward. You know, how would you start a business if you didn't believe in your potential? How would you fall in love if you didn't believe in your potential? How would you overcome something that you found to be difficult if you didn't believe that you had potential? What we soon find is with the narcissistic dynamic that potential, that word, that concept is skewed, and it's skewed into darkness because we find as survivors that we get so focused on the potential, not what we're experiencing, not what we're seeing, not how we're emotionally feeling. We're focused on the perceived potential of how we view this person in the very beginning. That's where it gets scary. That's where it becomes a very bad word. So when we're waiting for potential, or as I like to say now, the sun will come out tomorrow, during this situationship, you have experienced so much, and these things lead to evidence. These things lead to facts. And the facts are, you're not having a good time in this situationship. You're not happy. You're not feeling emotionally safe. But what happens is that we end up superimposing our hope and potential on this person, even though they're acting like a bad-ish, crazy demon out of hell. We're saying to ourselves, you know what? Listen, they're having a bad day. Have you ever found yourself saying that? Or they had a bad day at work if they have a job, or, they're stressed out. Maybe there's something bothering them that they're not sharing with me. And that's where we have the hope. And that's where we start doing silly things like literally waiting for an apology, literally waiting for consistency, waiting for accountability, waiting for the relationship to become what it promised to be. That's the scary part about potential, because you're waiting on something that never really existed. And I'm not saying that to judge your relationship or tell you for facts what you're going through, but you know what you're feeling, don't you? You know how this relationship is making you feel inside. Does it feel like love? Or do you feel yourself always throwing parts away of yourself just to keep the peace? One of the things that we must work on constantly, and this is what the Now movement exists for, one of the things that we need to work on constantly is the reclaiming our identity, or in simple layman's terms, rebuilding ourselves. We've lost so much of ourselves in this situationship. We have given up huge chunks of our very identity just to keep the peace, or in the hopes by showing them that we're giving of ourselves, that they would reciprocate and actually return that to us. Again, we look at the evidence that is in front of us. It's not happening, and we know deep down inside it's not happening. But for empaths, hope springs eternal. And we often ask ourselves this question once we get out as survivors: what was one thing your intuition or your discernment actually tried to tell you that you ignored? I speak about this often. Psychologically, we become so enmeshed in the fact of we need to bring this person back to the person that we saw in the beginning that we don't care about anything else. So we see the red flags. We see those gut feelings. Well, we feel those gut feelings. We see that our boundaries are being eroded. It seems like as soon as we set them here, they come with an axe trying to break them down. And then, of course, there's the self-doubt. The self-doubt. I think that is the most painful part of everything, is where you begin to doubt yourself for no reason. You have no factual evidence to begin the process of doubting yourself. But when you're dealing with this demon, self-doubt just rules the day as far as you're concerned. You lose so much confidence. And this is done strategically, and it's done on purpose, because, as I say, in many lives that I do, if you're shining, that means that the spotlight isn't on a narcissist. Thereby, you just cause a narcissistic injury. Let me ask you a question. How many of you started literally dimming your light because you knew it just brought problems? Deep down inside, you knew. You didn't say to yourself, let me dim my light. You just started falling in line with the fact that, hey, if I don't mention that I had a win, I might be able to get through today. If I don't mention that I succeeded in something, I won't feel like I'm walking on eggshells the whole day, or much less, much worse, they're going to ignore me. They're going to isolate me. They're not going to let me be emotionally seen. That's a terrible place to be in a relationship. And the way that I sum this up is, in my notes, is your intuition wasn't broken. It was simply overruled. Okay, again, with that hope and potential, we kind of shut everything down because we're working furiously on trying to bring the person back that we saw in the very beginning. It's scary, but it's true, So even though, and this is why I'm clipping this up and recording it on a number of devices, because, we're building something important here, and I need this room to get filled up. I know that it's new. But sometimes new things are great. I mean, I guess the person that got the first light bulb was happy as heck, or the first car, or took the first trip via plane was happy as heck. It was new. Yes, there was. Every time we get something new, there's a little fear, there's a little hesitation. However, this is here to help people heal. And the things that we built within the library, the classroom rather, is, we've got Echo's Path, we got Break the Trauma Bond in 7 Steps, Rewriting Reality, Trauma Bond Exit Protocol videos, Clarity Response System, and you know what? Just so much stuff for our members, for those that are looking to seriously heal. And I'm not saying this is a sales pitch, but I'm saying this as these are the resources that's offered. Okay, to build a safe and secure community, we have offered these resources to you. And let me tell you something else, okay? And this is very, very important. I talked about this last night. I'm still excited. I'll be going live on multiple networks to talk about this, but Juneteenth, right here in Camden County, that's actually where the nonprofit Church of Real Talk resides. We have been invited to the Juneteenth celebration. There's a lot of things that I had to think about. In fact, the deadline to send in the acceptance was yesterday, and I sent it in yesterday. But I saw this as a great opportunity to bring healing offline into the real world. So yeah, the goal is, books, a table, valuable interactions, because there are a lot of people that, and I know this for a fact because I was one of them, there are a lot of people that are dealing with and struggling with narcissistic abuse and trauma bonds and don't know where to go. You know, the Church of Real Talk, the Now movement, becomes inside that huge celebration. I've actually done it under my other LLC. Under that huge celebration becomes that point where people have access to healing tools, you know, where I can send them over to the healing library, where they can join the community if they so fit, or they can actually pick up a book that is relevant to narcissistic abuse and trauma bonds. You know, I'm trying to figure out how to have as many activities. I'll be going live so I can talk further with you guys, and maybe you guys can make a few suggestions. So, and if you're in the area, please come by the table and say hello. Let's speak. Let's chop it up, as the kids say. You know, I would love that. I would love if you're in the area, Camden, New Jersey. It's going to be, if it doesn't rain, it's going to be right in front of City Hall, right in that big, huge park. I think it's called Roosevelt Park. It's going to be in there. So hopefully if you're there, if you're in the area, stop by. Say hello. Make your presence known. You know, I would love that. So from today's conversation, what is one thing you're taking with you to help and assist in your healing? Think about that for a second. Think about that. I know we rushed through this, but I wanted to record this so that, you know, we can have a record of what we do right here at Real Talk, the Inner Circle. You know, and I need you to remember, healing isn't a race. It's a return to your voice, a return to your peace, a return to yourself. And with that being said, as always, stay powerful.